CRO-AM Connections, connecting with Croatian-Americans through conversation and events to share our culture. Today in our show, we have Jack Baric. He's an Emmy Award-winning documentary filmmaker. He's a producer, a writer, and a director, and he's coming to us from Rancho Palos Verdes, California. Thank you all for joining us today, and Dobro nam došli. Today on our show, we have Jack Baric. He's an Emmy Award-winning documentary filmmaker. He's a producer, a writer, and a director. He does it all. Not sure how, but we're going to find out today. And he's coming to us from Rancho Palos Verdes. Hopefully I didn't screw that up. California. Welcome, Jack.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate being on here. I really enjoy talking to my fellow Croatians.
Appreciate that, Jack. Thanks for coming on. So we actually haven't met. I was interviewing Peter from Adriatic Travel. He said, hey, you should try to connect with Jack Baric. And I looked you up. You got a really interesting career, and I'm lucky to be able to get you on the show and I know you're busy. You got a lot going on your plate right now. So thanks for taking time to do this. We have three parts to the show. The first is getting into your family history, your Croatian roots. Second, we'll dive into your filmmaking career. And then third, your present or future endeavors, what you're working on right now and where that's going to lead to. So let's dive into your family history, your Croatian roots. Where did it all start?
Sure. So my parents are both born in Croatia on islands off of Zadar. My dad was from an island called Ugljan. The village is Sutomišica. And my mom's from an island called Dugi Otok, and the village is called Velerat. They came here separately and met here in San Pedro.
Oh, wow.
My mom came in a traditional way, no drama. Well, a little drama, but not big drama. My dad, on the other hand, the classic late 1950s Croatian story of escaping communism. Yeah. Him and his buddies got on a boat and went to Italy. He was in a refugee camp for 4 years in Italy. Or refugee camps, plural. Had an opportunity probably a year into it to go to Australia, which is where his sister, who also escaped with him, went. Oh. She went to Melbourne. He didn't want to go to Australia. He really wanted to go to the United States. So he hung in there, and 4 years later, or 3 years after she left, so 4 years in total, he finally got his papers and was able to come. Not long after arriving, met my mom. They got married. And had me and my brother and sister. And so here I am.
There you go. Rest is history. So do you guys go back often? Did you travel a lot back?
Yeah. So the first time we went back was in 1970. I was 5 years old. And my dad, it was the first time he'd seen his parents since he escaped. I was too young to realize how emotional that was. And as an adult now, it really impacts me more than it did when I was a little kid. And then from that point up until today, every third or fourth summer we would visit. When I was younger, the visits were like 2-3 months. I would go for the whole summer. Now they're more like 2 or 3 weeks, which is, not the same. But I spent a lot of time there, and enough time that I felt like, I knew the country. Or at least our little tiny part of the country, the villages where my parents were from. And had friends there and family there. So it wasn't as if I was coming there as a tourist. Actually, quite the opposite. We stayed in the old house and, had that experience of spending the summer on a Dalmatian island.
Yeah, nice. How's the Croatian? How's that? How's the
Hrvatski? How's my Hrvatski?
Yeah.
My Hrvatski is puno bolje kad pijem pive. I posle 2-3 pive, odlično. Dok onda...
That's good. That's good. Yes, the liquor and the beer helps. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've been pretty active.
Wait, I'm sorry. I just don't mean to interrupt you, but I just thought of a funny story.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I was a kid, I would go to the islands, and there was no drinking laws. You could just walk into a bar at any age. So I'm 15 years old on one of my trips, and somebody says, we're going to go get beers, and I'm waiting for the adults to come buy the beers for us that we're going to convince to buy us some beers. And they're like, what are you doing? Standing here, go. And I realized they're telling me to walk into a bar and order a beer. And I did, and the guy handed me a beer, which was, I was shocked he would do that.
Uh-huh.
And so and I told all my American friends this, and they didn't believe me. They actually literally thought I was lying that I could do this because I'm 15 years old, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I was so enamored with this idea of being able to buy a beer that I bought a lot of them when I was there. And my nickname in my village was Pivica because I drank so many beers.
Yeah, because they probably, yeah, your friends probably thought you were telling tales when you came back, right? Nobody could do that at that age here, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
know, 15 years old, walking in a bar and ordering a drink, and yeah,
right.
so it was my first love of the country was being able to order a beer.
That's fantastic. You've always been active in the Croatian community. I mean, I read during the war you were in D.C. You were actually advocating and demonstrating at certain times for Croatian recognition, right? So talk to us a little bit about that time.
Yeah, well, like you know, I mentioned, I spent many summers as a kid going there. So when the
Yeah.
war started in Croatia, it wasn't this faraway land where that was at war, kind of like maybe Ukraine is to us now, where it's this really sad story,
Mm.
or Gaza Strip, or any of the other
Yeah.
places you see that are being that were at war. This was highly personal for me because this was happening in a place where I had friends and family. My family's from Zadar, you know, and
Yeah.
Zadar was under siege for many months. And we would call home and find out that they were in a bomb shelter the night before for 13 hours. And that wasn't once or twice. That was a regular occurrence. So I took it very personally, as most of us did here,
Yeah.
and got really involved here locally in San Pedro, which has a big Croatian community. And that sort of naturally evolved into me volunteering to go to Washington, D.C. And I quite literally just showed up one day. They kind of knew I was coming, but I
Uh-huh.
think I told them I was coming. I don't think they really believed me because when I
Uh-huh.
showed up, they were like, they didn't know what to do with me. So I went first to the embassy. It wasn't an embassy yet because we hadn't been recognized as a country yet, but it was the embassy in waiting.
Okay.
And they didn't know what to do with me. So they sent me over to the Croatian-American Association, which is at the time was lobbying on behalf of Croatian Americans Congress to recognize Croatia and stop the war. You know,
Yeah.
those two things. And there they put me to work, and I was there for about a month and went home. I get home on a Saturday, and I literally the same day I get home, I get a call, hey, can you come back? And what had happened was the two people, George Rudman and Maria Grasic or now Kosic, were leaving to go to Croatia to join the Croatian Foreign Press Bureau.
Mm.
And so now there was nobody left. So they called me back, and I went home on a Saturday and went right back on a Monday. And I told them I would stay until they found a replacement. And my replacement, because I was an interim executive director, and my replacement was Luka Mišetić, who's well known in Croatian circles for being the attorney who represented General Ante Gotovina at the ICTY. And
Okay.
so Luke and I met then and became, you know, lifelong friends. But I had just the real fortune, and I always make sure to qualify this because it sounds like I did something, which I didn't, but I happened to be there
Right.
when Croatia was recognized by the United States, just by pure luck. And I was at a meeting of the Foreign Relations Committee in Congress. There's, I think, 21 Congress members on that committee, and they were going to take a vote on whether they should recommend that the United States recognize Croatia. Well, at this meeting, they got word that it had already happened, and Croatia was going to be recognized that day by the United States. It had already been recognized by the rest of the world. Um, and so I'm the only Croatian in the room. And I
Wow.
wasn't really there to do anything other than kind of take notes and see what they're talking about. I was just almost like there as an observer, but because I'm the only Croatian in the room, every single congressperson there wanted to shake somebody's hand to
Yeah.
congratulate them. So I de facto became the Croatian representative and was accepting congratulations on behalf of the United States of America for the recognition of
Uh,
Croatia. And so it was like a beautiful moment. I literally cried as I left the building that day because it was so emotional. But I'm very, very keen to always remind people that I did nothing to earn that honor. I was just very lucky.
Hey, it's place and time, right? You're in the
Yeah.
right place, right time. But that's a moment. You cherish that forever. It's
I'm actually
awesome.
getting goosebumps as I'm telling you the
Yeah.
story because it was really an emotional moment.
Yeah, that is awesome. I mean, you even I know you like co-founded Croatian Spring. You did a lot of activity during that time. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, but you deserve that day for all the work you've done. So yes, take that and appreciate that because you need to be recognized as well for all your efforts as well. So
I appreciate it, but I also am very keenly aware that there was so many of us who did so much, and there was people who did more.
yeah,
And so I did a lot, and
yeah,
and I'm proud of the fact that I did a lot. So I'm not trying to undersell the fact that I was really active and did a lot to
yeah,
help at a time when our people really needed it.
yeah,
But in that particular circumstance, I really was just kind of lucky.
yeah. I know. So let's dive into your film career. I'm gonna rattle off some things that I know it. I may not have all of them, but I think I need to do this because you have a really neat career. You've done a lot of different things. Company wide, you have Bodic Media Entertainment, Go for Crow Entertainment, Game Change Sports Media, co-founder of that company. You co-wrote a book with Paul McDonald, Through the Tunnel. You're known for films like Port Town, stories about the dock workers in LA San Pedro, Searching for a Storm. You mentioned the trial of General Anta Gotovina, Blood Thursday, which I think you won an Emmy, which is that the Emmy behind your shoulder there?
It is,
Nice,
yeah,
nice. And
yeah.
that's thing I think for writing, right? You were the writer on
I produced and wrote, so
producing.
they yeah, produced and wrote that
Nice.
particular film. It's actually one of the few that I did not direct. So I guess maybe I should direct less and produce and write more.
And I'm not done. City Divided. I watched Searching for a Storm. That was really good. That was really interesting. Then you also did a City Divided, USC UCL rivalry. If you're a collegiate football player, you got to watch that. It's pretty neat. But you also use that as some philanthropy opportunity there. 2015, the Year of the Storm. That's the Operation Storm, liberating the Republic of Croatia. Different genre twist, but you won some awards here. A Place Among the Dead, which I thought was pretty neat. Essential, focusing on the blue collar workers, vulnerability, their economic vulnerability after COVID-19, and the smell of money, which we watched as well. It was really, really interesting about the Croatian impact. There was other ethnic cultural impacts about the fishing and canning industry, but to learn about the Croatian impact was really, really neat to watch. So, how did this all begin? Your interest in filmmaking? Where did it all start? Was it always a passion, or did it just bloom from some moment?
Well, I grew up in San Pedro, which is a real blue collar town, and as a kind of like a lot of blue collar towns, I and all my buddies loved sports, and we played, in the street, played on leagues, played in rec leagues at high school, then rec leagues after. So it was all sports and just typical blue collar upbringing. Not at all, nothing, no idea that I would ever be a writer, producer, director, filmmaking, anything creative. It wasn't in my ecosystem whatsoever.
Huh.
And I finished school at USC and needed to get a job and got one in real estate because my dad sold residential real estate in San Pedro, and
Huh.
a lot of my buddies at USC were going into commercial real estate. And so I get to my first job at Los Angeles brokerage, and my boss there one day famously said to me, if I studied the real estate listings as much as I did the sports page, I'd already be a millionaire. And then a few weeks later, fired me.
Huh.
And when he fired me, by the way, I hugged him because I hated real estate. So it was
Yeah.
like glad to get out of there.
Yeah.
And I think if I went back and did it again, I'd probably enjoy it. But at the time, I was just probably kind of immature and didn't like it at all. And so now I'm out of a job, and I run into a fraternity brother of mine at a party, and he had just started this really cool big city magazine back when magazines were cool, called Exposure.
Hmm.
And Exposure was kind of like a pop culture magazine based in Hollywood. It did stories on music and film and fashion and other issues of the day. The staff were just like the most unbelievably creative, interesting, cool people you've ever met. And I'd never met people like this before. Like I
Yeah.
said, all my buddies we were just guys who drank beer and played sports.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I instantly bonded with them and really fell in love with storytelling. And so from that, I ended up going off and creating my own magazines later. Back in the day, they used to call them zines. They were these little
Huh.
throwaway magazines that you would put on a coffee house or record store floor back when there were magazines that were doing those things.
Yeah.
And I published one called Plunge. And so I was doing that. And through this whole process, I just thought to myself, if I'm going to tell stories on paper, wouldn't it be cooler, bigger, and better to do it on film?
Mm.
So I just took a lot of classes at UCLA Extension, my crosstown rival from the school I went to at
That's
USC.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I would go to campus and not wear my SC gear, um,
Uh,
and um, and I just learned how to produce. I learned how to write, and I little by little just got myself to the point where I was able to do it. Found an investor and made my first documentary film called Port Town, which was in San Pedro.
yeah.
And making that film was really my film school, because I'd never gone. I was an economics major at USC,
Mm.
and that was what started it all. And I've been making films ever since.
That is really cool. But you do have there's kind of a sense to your work. It is the blue collar theme, and it kind of penetrates through all of your work a little bit. So that upbringing and working in kind of that Fishtown, the cannery stories. Do you think that still relates today? How has that changed? How have you seen that area change? Does that affect your work at all of the change in the culture or the work in the area? How does that work for you as far as like thinking about things to do for your work?
Well, they say write what you know, right?
Uh-huh.
And so my entire film career is basically built around three things. And they're all part of my life and part of my world. It's sports. So
Mhm.
I made the documentary A City Divided about the history of the USC UCLA rivalry, and we'll in a moment talk about the new sports film I've got coming
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
It's blue collar workers, because I grew up in a blue collar town. So that would be fishing industry, goods movement. The movie I made, Essential, tells the story of how blue collar workers are essential, and how we need to view them that way. And that came out of the pandemic. So blue collar workers, sports, and the third is my Croatian heritage. So those are the three things that have been in every film I've made.
mm,
And they're all my passions, and I just kind of follow my passion on things that I find interesting. And yeah, I've never really gone outside of my own backyard, my backyard being a blue collar town I grew up in with Croatian heritage and a guy who loves sports.
yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And one of those, you actually had a really good campaign, a fight against cancer, the USC
Yeah.
UCL rivalry. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. Thank you for
Yeah.
asking me about that. So my partner on that film was a guy named Paul McDonald. Paul was an All-American quarterback at USC, played in the NFL for 8 years for the Browns and the Cowboys. And it's funny because he's just a few years older than me, but I was like eighth, ninth grade middle school kid. And my friends and I were all huge SC football fans. And he was the quarterback of the team that we were fans of. And then I later got an opportunity to meet him with this idea of making a documentary about the history of the USC UCLA football rivalry. I saw one about the history of the Ohio State Michigan rivalry, and which is great rivalry. But I thought ours was better, for one simple reason: we share a city, right?
Yeah.
And so this
Yeah.
idea that you could have a brother, a dad, a spouse,
Yeah.
or whatever, who on one hand is your loved one, but on the other hand is your enemy. I
Yeah.
felt like was a really interesting way of really for storytelling. So I go
Yeah.
to Paul and I'm telling him all this film geek stuff about how it's interesting, and he's completely glazed over during the pitch, like not interested,
Uh-huh.
politely nodding, but not interested.
Uh,
And then I just kind of as a throwaway said, oh, and by the way, the other thing that would be cool about a project like this is both universities have really, really wealthy boosters, big donor base. And so we can have a really cool red carpet premiere and use it as a vehicle to raise money for charity, and get all the big fat cat boosters to come and buy tables like at a gala that
yeah.
is also a premiere. And he perked up, because if you know Paul's just a really great guy, and he really is passionate about giving back to the world. And so that was the thing that made him interested in the project. And not even a week later, he ran into a guy named Barry Hoven, who had just started a cancer research nonprofit called Cure It. And so Barry's company, US Storage, was the sponsor of the film,
Oh,
but all the other ancillary things that went along with the film, including being broadcast on Fox Sports, the premiere, and everything we did, were to benefit his charity. And we created this campaign called Rivals United for a Cure. So the two rivals came together, and it was wildly successful. And to this day, I think we've netted about $5 million for cancer research.
Wow.
And all the money from that project has gone equally to the two university hospitals, because they're both really good cancer research hospitals. So USC has gotten half the money and UCLA has gotten half the money. And it's something that we're both really proud that we did, because we just made a little football film that ended up doing something that potentially could be saving people's lives.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great story in itself. I mean, it's a good film, but it's a great story of how you helped help raise all that money. 5 million is nothing to sneeze at for cancer research. That is really impressive. So, moving into your current project, More Than a Dream, which is really exciting if you follow anything Croatian sports related, and it's about the Croatian national basketball team in '92 played against the U.S. Dream Team. So how did this project start? What was the impetus of you thinking about doing this?
Well, I mean, literally almost from the first day of starting a production company. My production company, by the way, started on the same week that my twins were born. So I'll
Oh,
always know how long I've been in production, because it was literally the same. I was commuting from, they let me stay in the hospital with my wife and the babies. So I was sleeping in the hospital and going out to set on my first week of production ever. And from that time, I always knew that this was a story that I wanted to tell. But I didn't want to make a film that would only play to Croatian audiences. I want it to be bigger.
hmm.
And, something that you could see like on a Netflix or an HBO or one of those.
Yeah,
And I never really had confidence that I could do that. But our Consul General, Rene Pea, here in Los Angeles, the Croatian Consul General, somehow, some way met some producers who do sports films, and we took a call with them, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, this is a great project. You have the Dream Team hook, so that Americanizes it, and yes, you can, if you make this, you have a legitimate opportunity to get this distributed in a really meaningful way in the United States." And from that meeting, I then had the confidence to go out and do it. And
hmm.
so I'm making that film. And when I was pitching it in Hollywood, the pitch was very simple: was you've all heard of the Dream Team. What if I told you that the team that played against them in the gold medal game has a more interesting story than they do?
Yeah,
And after people stopped laughing because they thought I was joking, I'd
yep,
be like, "No, I'm actually serious. They have a much more interesting story. It was a brand new country, only 6 months old,
yep,
in the middle of the bloodiest war on European soil since World War II. And somehow, some way, this little tiny country of less than 4 million people was able to band together a miraculous team that went all the way to the gold medal game and shared the stage with the world famous Dream Team." And
yeah,
so that's it. That's the story. And it's a story that's absolutely worth telling. And the players who I've met in pre-production have all to a man basically said that year, that basketball tournament was the afterthought. It wasn't about basketball. It was about doing something really special for our people.
yeah,
And it's a really great story of how the human spirit can overcome even the worst of times.
yeah. In the middle of the war, you have the Olympics, and you have this team going up against this David and Goliath almost. I know it's there's more, but it's just there's a lot of backstory, but there's also this huge basketball story as well. It's just crazy. If you think about the players that were on the U.S. team. I mean, I went back and looked at the team. This is nuts who they played against: Barkley, Magic, Bird, Ewing, Clyde the Glide, Jordan, Moses Malone, Mullen, Scottie Pippen, Robinson, John Stockton, Christian Laettner. I mean, that is crazy. And they scored the most points. Croatian team scored the most points out of any other team that played the U.S. Dream Team.
Well, yeah, and honestly, the tournament that year was not about who was going to win the gold medal. It
Yeah,
was pretty much well understood that was going to be the United States Dream Team.
yeah,
The real tournament was who would get the chance to play them in the gold medal game. And the crazy game in that tournament was the semifinal against what they call the unified team, which is basically the Soviet Union minus Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. and so the Russians, as we call them, but it was really the Soviet Union minus the Baltic countries.
Yeah.
And that team in that game was up by 10, 12 points the whole game. And Croatia was down by 6 points with less than a minute to play. And they somehow, some way found a way to win that game and make it to the gold medal game. So it's actually quite like a miraculous finish. And the interesting kind of backstory to that is the last time many of those Croatian players had played against those Soviet players was in the gold medal game of the '88 Olympics, and the Soviets beat them. So,
Wow.
so they really they just kind of pulled one out, but it wasn't by luck. I mean, they were
Yeah.
phenomenal basketball players. There was 5 players on that Croatian team that would end up playing in the NBA
Yeah.
at a time when international players were not playing in the NBA.
Yeah.
They are the pioneers of the global game. Not just
Yeah.
them, but some of the other players from that Olympic era are the pioneers of changing the NBA from a domestic league into a global league.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot there. I mean, you're talking about Dražen Petrovic, Toni Kukoc, obviously Dino Raja, Stojko Vrankovic. I mean, these were, like you said, the pioneers heading in, and you see a lot of the athletes coming over now in the high school and the collegiate level, working their way through the system, that probably wouldn't have happened if these guys wouldn't have broke through like that. But again, to do it during the middle of a war is just amazing that they could represent in a way they did, and still do it during that wartime era.
Yeah, well, during that 91-92 season coming up, leading up to those Olympics, there was no Croatian league. They had to cancel it because of the war. So large majority of Croatian players couldn't even play. A handful of the guys that were on teams, the 2 that were playing in Europe were Zadar and Split. And Zadar were playing their home games that year, home games in Trieste, Italy, and Split were playing their home games in Spain. So
Oh,
that's the background of preparing for Olympics. Is you don't even have a league. Your players are
yeah,
having their home games overseas, or not overseas but in another country,
yeah, yeah.
and that is kind of the backdrop to them coming together and somehow banding together and making it to that gold medal game, which is it's a miracle story. It really
Yeah.
is.
So tell us when it's going to be due out or released, and what other things could happen during this period of time that you're working on it.
So a couple things. I'm going to be in Croatia in late May, early June, filming many of the interviews. And I'll be doing that and other things in the making of the film all the way for the next couple years so that we can premiere the film at the '28 Olympics.
Nice.
It's a really unbelievably great full circle moment because those Olympics are going to be in Los Angeles, which is my hometown.
Yeah.
So having a film about the Olympics at the Olympics, and it happens to be in Los Angeles, I mean, the stars are really aligned for this project. It's really cool. And one of the things that I'm really trying to figure out how to do, and in as many different ways as possible, is have all of our Croatian community somehow be a part of it, whether it be social media and sending us their stories. A lot of my investors, probably at the end will be pretty much most of my investors are Croatian. But the idea of us coming together and telling the story as a community rather than just me singularly doing it is something that I find very appealing because I love the idea of us all kind of gathering together like we did during the war with this common purpose of telling a story, which is our greatest story, and really putting a positive spotlight on our athletes and what they've done, not only at those Olympics, but even beyond.
Yeah. And so if somebody wants to contribute a story, how do they reach out to you? Is it through social media, or tell us a little bit about that?
So I think the easiest way to find us is we have the Croatian Dream Team is our Instagram, and you can find us there. Go on our social, and you can DM us or whatever. But that would probably be the easiest way.
Excellent. Well,
other than me giving you my cell phone number,
which you don't want to do. Yeah, you don't want all those calls. Yeah, so we'll be happy to push that as much as possible to support you. I really we're really looking forward to this. It's exciting. I know it's exciting for you because there's a personal bent to it, but with the LA and the Olympics there and everything. But I think just from Croatian nationalism and the diaspora around the world, but especially in the U.S. This is going to be super exciting for us to be able to see this and be, not physically a part of it. I mean, you're doing all the work with others, right? But there's always, as Croatians, we always have an attachment to something, and then it's, I think, this is one of those
and
things.
honestly, there is ways that, just the social media example alone, if we are all out there helping promote this idea of this story being told, Netflix or HBO, whomever, they notice that. They say, oh, well, there's not only people who will watch this, but will very vehemently help promote it because they care that much, right?
Yeah.
So there are things that we can do collectively that set us apart from, let's say, almost any other films I've made, because we have the power of our people. When we get fired up, we get fired up, right? And so, and this is I think it's in our interest to tell our own stories and remind the people about this little tiny place that has done, I think, some really great things.
Yeah, agreed. Jack, I really want to thank you for taking time. I know you're super busy right now and you're gearing up for your trip. It's just been great talking to you tonight, and appreciate the time that you give us.
Well, I appreciate you hanging in there with me while I've been bumbling around trying to find some time to see you. And I love talking to my fellow Croatians, as I said earlier, and I appreciate what you do because all of this is the glue that keeps our community together is things like your show. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Jack. And it's our duty, as you said, to help spread the word about this film and anything else Croatian wise. We should be supportive locally, nationally, internationally, however we can. So it's our mission to keep that going. So thank you once again. We're going to do a little wrap up here as we usually do. So we want to say thank you, point of follow to all of our CRO-AM followers for tuning in, to Filthy 46 Productions for their editing and production expertise. So until next time, Živeli Hrvati, veliki pozdrav I Bog. If you have appreciated this interview or past interviews, or if you know of someone that we should interview, please feel free to reach out to us via email at info@CRO-AM Connections.com. You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple, and other podcast platforms, along with watching us on our YouTube channel or following us on Facebook and Instagram at CRO-AM Connections. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, please support all local and non-local Croatian-American events, which you can find on our mobile app. Thanks and appreciation to Jack Baric for being our guest and for all the great picks. Croatian Dream Team, hashtag more than a dream. Baric Media Entertainment, Go for Crow Entertainment, Game Change Sports Media, Filthy 46 Productions, and as always, our CRO-AM followers.
Follow.